The Middle East has been redrawn in fire and smoke. On the morning of February 28, 2026, the world woke up to the sound of explosions echoing across Tehran, the kind of explosions that don't just shatter buildings, but shatter entire orders of power. What unfolded that day was not a surgical strike, not a warning shot, and not a covert operation conducted in shadows. It was a full-scale, coordinated military campaign, codenamed Epic Fury by the Pentagon and Roaring Lion by the Israeli Defense Forces, a joint U.S.-Israeli operation designed to do something that no Western power had openly attempted in the modern era: decapitate the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran and, in the words of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, remove the existential threat posed by the terrorist regime. The shockwaves from that campaign are still reverberating today, and at the center of the storm stands a question that has gripped intelligence agencies, governments, and analysts across the globe. Is Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, even alive? The joint U.S.-Israeli attack began after sunrise in Iran on February 28th, with massive explosions ringing out across the capital, Tehran. Videos showed towering plumes of thick black smoke rising from multiple sites. Iran's foreign ministry condemned what it called a gross violation of national sovereignty, while the Iranian Red Crescent Society reported over 200 people killed in strikes across the country. But the most seismic development was not the scale of the destruction, it was who died in it. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, 86, was killed in the joint operation. Among those also eliminated were top Iranian security officials, including the country's defense minister, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the secretary of the Iranian Supreme National Security Council. In a single morning, the entire command architecture of the Islamic Republic had been surgically removed. It was the most decisive leadership decapitation strike since the killing of Osama bin Laden, and arguably far more consequential in its regional and global implications. Trump posted on Truth Social that Israel, with U.S. support, had killed Khamenei, writing that the supreme leader was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems. Hours later, he warned Iran against further retaliation, saying they better not do that, however, because if they do, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before. This was not the language of diplomacy. This was the language of a president who believed he had struck a decisive, perhaps terminal blow against one of America's most enduring adversaries. The precision targeting of Khamenei's compound, later confirmed through satellite imagery published by Airbus, demonstrated a level of intelligence penetration inside Iran that Tehran had long believed impossible. It implied human intelligence assets embedded at the highest levels, advanced signals intelligence, and real-time satellite coordination between U.S. Central Command and the Israeli Air Force. Iran responded with an unprecedented wave of missile and drone launches of its own, spreading the conflict across the wider region. Air raid sirens wailed across Israel. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan all reported incoming Iranian strikes. The Jordanian military reported downing 49 drones and ballistic missiles threatening its territory. The use of ballistic missiles alongside swarms of armed drones represents a hallmark of Iran's layered retaliatory doctrine, one designed to overwhelm and exhaust regional air defense systems simultaneously. From a purely military standpoint, Iran's response was the largest coordinated missile and drone salvo ever launched by a non-superpower state in modern warfare. It tested every Patriot battery, every Iron Dome node, and every Aegis-equipped naval vessel within 1,000 miles. Iraq's security media cell reported 5 rockets targeting Baghdad International Airport, injuring airport staff and security personnel, a sign that Iran's proxy network was still operational, even as its central command burned. Now enter the fog of succession. Following Khamenei's death, Mojtaba Khamenei was named Iran's new supreme leader on the Sunday after the February 28th strikes. The appointment was extraordinary on its face, Mojtaba had long been considered a behind-the-scenes power broker, the IRGC's quiet kingmaker, a man who commanded fierce loyalty from the Revolutionary Guard's most hardline factions. But elevating him in the middle of an active military campaign against his country created an immediate and profound legitimacy crisis. He had no public record of governance, no history of public addresses, and no established relationship with the Iranian population. And then he simply disappeared. Since becoming supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei has avoided all public appearances, fueling urgent questions among intelligence services and world leaders about his health and whereabouts. CNN reported that he suffered injuries during the initial strikes, including a fractured foot, bruised eye, and minor facial lacerations. The absence of a living, breathing, publicly visible supreme leader in wartime is not merely a political embarrassment, it is a strategic crisis. Legitimacy in the Islamic Republic flows directly from the supreme leader. Without a visible, credible figurehead, the IRGC command structure risks fragmentation. Competing factions within Iran's security apparatus, the regular military, the Basij, the Quds Force, may begin operating with differing interpretations of strategic intent. This is precisely the scenario that U.S. and Israeli planners hope to engineer, not just physical destruction, but institutional paralysis at the apex of the Iranian state. Iranian authorities released only a written statement attributed to Mojtaba, vowing to continue pressure on U.S. allies, disrupt shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and retaliate against regional rivals. U.S. officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, criticized the reliance on written statements, suggesting the new supreme leader was scared, injured on the run, and lacks legitimacy. Trump, speaking publicly, raised explicit doubts about Mojtaba Khamenei's survival, saying, "I don't know if he's even alive. So far, nobody's been able to show him. I'm hearing he's not alive, and if he is, he should do something very smart for his country. And that's surrender." These are not idle words from the American president. They are calculated information warfare, a deliberate psychological operation designed to undermine the new supreme leader's authority, sow doubt within the IRGC officer corps, and potentially accelerate internal fractures within the regime. Whether or not Mojtaba Khamenei is alive, the very act of questioning his existence publicly destabilizes the Iranian chain of command. It tells Iranian generals that their orders may be coming from a ghost or from a man too broken to lead. Social media has circulated doctored images and AI-generated videos of Mojtaba, further deepening the mystery and weaponizing information uncertainty against Tehran's credibility. Meanwhile, the kinetic campaign has continued. U.S. Central Command confirmed striking more than 90 Iranian military targets on Karg Island, while preserving the oil infrastructure itself. Karg Island is Iran's jugular vein, handling the vast majority of the country's oil exports. Striking its military installations while leaving the petroleum infrastructure intact was a precise and calculated message. The U.S. is not trying to permanently destroy Iran's economic capacity. It is demonstrating the ability to do so at will, holding it hostage to future compliance. Trump described the Karg Island attacks as having totally demolished the island's military capacity while leaving pipelines intact, adding with characteristic bluntness, "We may hit it a few more times just for fun." Strip away the casual tone and the strategic logic is unmistakable. This is coercive bombardment, military pressure applied to force a political outcome, not obliteration for its own sake. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps threatened commercial shipping, declaring it was policing the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz to ensure vessels act in accordance with regulations in order to remain safe from being hit by stray projectiles. The Iranian military claimed to have struck a vessel owned by a U.S. company off the Iraqi coast, while a third ship was struck near the Strait of Hormuz, causing a fire on board. The Strait of Hormuz remains the single most dangerous choke point in global energy security. Approximately 20% of the world's oil and 25% of its liquefied natural gas transits these waters. Iran's strategy of asymmetric maritime warfare using fast boats, anti-ship missiles, naval mines, and drone swarms does not require a military victory. It only requires uncertainty. Every tanker captain who diverts, every insurer who raises premiums, every oil trader who hedges against closure is a tactical victory for Tehran, even in the face of overwhelming conventional military losses. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi clarified Iran's position, stating the strait was only closed to American and Israeli ships, a careful legal and strategic distinction designed to isolate Washington and Tel Aviv from their allies, rather than trigger a unified global maritime response. Trump urged other nations, explicitly naming China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom, to send naval assets to the region to free up shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz. Neither Beijing nor London confirmed they were dispatching warships. This is the central strategic dilemma of this conflict for the international community. If global powers send warships to escort tankers, they legitimize and entrench American military objectives in the region. If they don't, they risk an economic constriction that will hit their own energy-dependent economies. China, the world's largest oil importer, faces a particularly agonizing calculus. Beijing is deeply opposed to a U.S.-sponsored regime change in Tehran, yet cannot afford prolonged closure of the strait. The EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas called Khamenei's death a defining moment in Iran's history, adding that while what comes next remains uncertain, there is now an open path to a different Iran, one that its people may have greater freedom to shape. The language of Brussels is the language of cautious hope, but beneath it lies a profound anxiety about what follows a decapitated theocracy, a democratic transition, a military junta, or a protracted civil war that destabilizes the entire Persian Gulf. A senior Arab diplomat told the Times of Israel that while the killing of Khamenei represents a massive blow to the Islamic Republic, the regime had prepared for exactly this scenario. Former Supreme Leader Khamenei had reportedly put in place detailed succession plans and emergency chains of command, elevating loyalist Ali Larijani to manage the crisis. Iran knows that the U.S. wants this military campaign to end as quickly as possible and will seek to drag it out, the diplomat said. This is the strategic trap that military historians have long warned about in decapitation strikes. Killing the leader does not kill the institution. The IRGC has over 125,000 troops, ballistic missile arsenals hardened in underground bunkers across the Zagros Mountains, and a proxy network stretching from Beirut to Baghdad to Sana'a. Even a headless Iran can bleed its adversaries for years. What we are witnessing is a conflict that has already exceeded every prior threshold of Middle Eastern warfare in the 21st century. The deliberate killing of a sitting head of state by external military action, the open targeting of a nation's oil infrastructure, the near closure of one of the world's most vital maritime corridors, and a succession crisis around a new supreme leader who may or may not be alive. These are not developments that a diplomatic reset can quickly walk back. The question is no longer whether this war will reshape the Middle East. It already has. The question is what form that reshaped Middle East takes. A post-theocratic Iran navigating a fragile democratic opening, a prolonged insurgency sustained by IRGC loyalists and proxy militias, or an escalation spiral that draws in regional powers and potentially global ones. U.S. Energy Secretary Wright made the American strategic objective explicit. The Strait of Hormuz must and will be reopened, and the U.S. military is there to solve a long-term problem. Whether the long-term problem Washington thinks it is solving matches the long-term problem it will actually create. That is the question that will define this decade. The ghost of Mojtaba Khamenei haunts not just a palace in Tehran, but the entire strategic architecture of the modern Middle East. And the world is watching, waiting, and holding its breath.